Please welcome to the stage, Brian Cartier.
Hello, people. All right, so following DJ Scoosh, wow, that was so dope. Thank you so much. That was like, honestly, for me to follow somebody else that understands hip hop culture, I'm so thankful, really, because I mean, really, that's what I'm from, and that's part of what I'm kind of here to talk to you about a little bit. I mean, really, a lot of it is really about my own personal development, about how I came to be where I'm at. But a big part of that is hip hop culture. So kind of having that intro was just priceless, really. Yeah. Thank you very much. So I've been here on the Seacoast for about 16 years. I originated in Grand Forks, North Dakota, is where I come from, or near there anyway. So coming all this way, you know, I'm gonna kind of give you just a little bit of background on how I ended up, you know, being the visual artist that I am today. So go. So, as I said, I grew up in North Dakota originally. So, my family was a very mixed culture family. My father originally came from just outside of Seoul, Korea. He's half Korean, half black. Was you know, and an orphan there. Came here in the early '70s. There's my brothers there, and myself as a little guy. So, years later, you know, but. So I guess to backtrack, art was the big thing in my family. Both of my parents were actually physically disabled, so sports were never really a thing. It was always really about art. So I mean, you know, myself personally, I grew up to be a heavy guy. I was always a big dude. I moved to New Hampshire when I was 18 years old. I had met a woman in what we called the chat room years ago, when you know the internet had first started. You know, so I came here from North Dakota all the way to New Hampshire because I met a woman in the chat room. You know, so came here when I was 18. You know, I ended up in the car business, which is what you had just seen. You know, I really came from very little in North Dakota. And when I came here, the first job I took was as a janitor. And I was a janitor for about a year and ended up in the car business. And I saw a lot of potential in the car business, and I was selling cars and doing well, and I kept moving on and thinking that the more that I did that, you know, that I would do well for my family. You know, we had a daughter and so forth, and we had got married and all of that. But I found myself, you saw a picture of a very beautiful Porsche there a second ago. I ended up selling, you know, Porsches and Audis, doing very well in the car business, but found myself unhappy there. You know, I actually found myself in a position where I'm sitting in the Porsche showroom in my office there, you know, and I have a $135,000 car sitting in front of my office, and beautiful car. And I couldn't help but think how much I hated to come to work that day. I had no excitement, and that was kind of a revelation for me, in that it was time for me to leave that industry. At that point, I guess there was nothing I was going to do in that industry that was really going to satisfy me myself. So I started doing art with my brother and so forth. Kind of fast forward here, Hoopla was an event that I put together in Dover that benefited the Seymour Osmond Community Center there. My daughter had spent many years in their after-school programs with my daughter there. So I started doing custom shoes, which you had seen, you know, which became, you know, artwork I was doing just from my home. You know, a lot of it, you know, harkened back to you know, my culture, Korean culture, my father being from there. Hip hop was always a big thing. Even being from North Dakota, of all places, that's what really spoke to me as a youth and growing up and so forth. So custom shoes are really what really brought me into taking art seriously. As a kid, I always drew growing up. You know, in the playground during recess and stuff, kids would be playing you know football and all kinds of different things, and I'm sitting over here in the corner drawing. That was just always my thing. Years later, I happened upon a space in the Washington Street Mill, and it was, you know, I looked at a bunch of other spaces in the building, nothing really quite worked. They showed me this space here, huge space. It was way bigger than I expected to even look at. It was not even, you know, what I had in mind. It's a huge space, full of crap. Ended up working out, you know, and so I started renovating the space. I had some great friends that were willing to help me, you know, and kind of saw my vision, you know, to keep things moving forward and to actually make this space into something. I'm very fortunate to have the space that I have there. So after spending all that time taking that space, I made it into this. So this was Studio Streetwear, opened in 2014. So I'd owned a clothing store at this point. I'd left the car business, had finally put all that behind me, had been through a divorce and all of that. You'll probably see at some point, I lost about 120 pounds throughout all of that at some point. I'm trying to kind of cover a lot. But my work was progressing into charcoal and so forth from custom shoes. Everything started with custom shoes. I never painted on anything until I painted on a shoe. Funny thing. And then so my work was progressing, and I was looking back at a lot of different influences I had musically and so forth. Custom shoes, will always be a thing. We ended up at a point, 2015. I did a series of shoes for the Miss USA pageant. So I did some for Miss Maid, did some for Miss New Hampshire and Miss Georgia as well. I did Swarovski crystals and so forth, and the fine work has always kind of been my thing. My space has kind of progressed from being a store to had progressed to being a collaborative art studio. We had many different art shows and musical performances and stuff there. And this is right in Dover. So we're doing things like this every month for the record. So if you're looking for something new, for something different, than what's offered normally, is happening there. Last year I had the opportunity to go to Atlanta with several different rappers that I work with in Boston. Hey, that's essentially what really got me started and got me going was being able to build relationships with these rappers in Boston. And the funny thing is that's what, it took me doing that before anybody took me seriously here in New Hampshire. I literally had to go all the way to Boston, like this shows here. That hoopla tournament that I had has essentially kind of segued into me being involved in a tournament in Boston that's called Hoop Hop. So it's a tournament that is literally comprised all of rappers and singers from the Boston metro area that all play in this tournament. This here is what I call a Korean dragonfish. So this is something that my work kind of progressed into doing these fish, and these fish became very popular. I started doing lots and lots of them, and they kind of went from being koi fish to betta fish and kind of started to become those Korean dragonfish. And that's something that's kind of really defined a period in my artistic career. You'll actually see them on the front of the Children's Museum of New Hampshire, right in Dover. Very, very happy to have the installation. And as my space has progressed, we've come to now. I've changed it from being studio, streetwear, more of a clothing store to an actual art studio. And so this is a mural I did in my studio as well. Because progress is really what it's really all been about. And finding myself and realizing at certain points that this wasn't where I saw my life going, or really where I was going to be happy, and trying to find where that was going to be. So, thank you very much.